Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Ramblin' Man discussion vlog. Um, Today I figured we'd do a quite simple and easy one. It's going to be essentially a general discussion about politics and real world stuff, real life stuff. Um, we're going to be doing a political compass test. Now, I've done one of these before a couple years back, but I want to take it again just so you guys can see essentially where I stand politically. If I'm going to start covering more political stuff on my channel, then I think it'd be beneficial for you guys to know exactly where I stand and where my leanings are. And then you can take my opinions and my commentary with a grain of salt or however you want to put it. So, without further ado, let's get into this, shall we? All right. So, question one. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interest of transnational corporations. I think, economically speaking, the world's headed towards a global economy at some point, maybe not in the near future, but in the future. Um, and yeah, I do agree. I'm going to go ahead and say I agree um, that it should serve humanity, not these corporations that all they care about is profit. Because if you make the primary basis of your economy on serving the people, then the people will put back into that economy. It's as simple as that, in my opinion. I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. I strongly disagree with that. Simply because, now it's not saying that I don't support my country, but I'm not going to blindly support my country or be a blind patriot because no matter what your country is, the U.S., Britain, Czechoslovakia, well, Czechoslovakia doesn't exist anymore. Um, India, Saudi Arabia, what have you. Um, Regardless of whether you're a patriot or whether you love your country or not, your country's government um, can do bad things, and in that respect, um, you can't support your country if they're doing bad things around the world, like illegal wars or just doing contradictory or things contradictory to the principles of that country. So, like in the United States, for example, if we tout democracy, but if we're, putting in dictators, which we have done, if we're toppling democracies around the world and putting dictators in to serve corporate interests, I cannot and will not support that ever. So, that being said, that's why I'm strongly disagreeing with that statement. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. I'll disagree. I mean, I think regardless of where you're born, you can be proud of your country if you understand if you educate yourself and understand the history of your country and what your country is trying to achieve. So, for example, if someone in Saudi Arabia, let's say, um, yeah, they may not agree with how their country stands as far as human rights and wars, but if in principle they agree with anything of what their country is supposed to stand for, then you can be proud of that. Um, Being proud in general is about what you relate to. So, in that respect, I can be proud of my country, but I can also sit here and be proud of another country for what they're doing, because they're part of humanity. So That's why I'm going to disagree with that. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Um, Disagree strongly. I think that the different qualities that make okay, let me rephrase that. I truly believe there are really no races. I mean, I've done some reading on the subject, and essentially, there's really no difference between a Caucasian person, an African American, uh, an Asian person, or any other supposed race. That the only thing that's different is the skin tone, and that has to do more with where that particular group of people originated from. Um, there's really only one race, the human race. So, with that said, that's why I strongly disagree with that. There's no superior qualities that make up one skin tone better than the other. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. No, I disagree with that because that's not always the case. Sometimes the enemy of my enemy is still my enemy. Or, my enemy becomes my friend. My enemy becomes destroyed when I make him my friend. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Now, international law is tricky because I don't know exactly how it's made through the UN, but I don't think it's all made to benefit humanity. I think that some it's just like the United States politics. It's whoever's got the biggest pool. Now, a lot of the international law that is put in place is good, and it's there for a reason. Like the international law that was made out of World War II, no chemical weapons, no prisoner of war experimentation, those types of things. So I'm going to military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. I'm going to agree with a proviso that it depends on the context of why you're defying international law. There's now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. Eh, there is a fusion of information and entertainment. Is it worrying? Sort of. Um, I think I would worry with the respect of it kind of blurs the lines between what's fake and what's real, or what's made up and what's real. Meaning, for example, if you try to put real world information into like a 1 hour TV drama, then it kind of makes it like, okay, this isn't a TV show, but is it real? I mean, I think information that is required for civic duties like voting and policy making should be stuck to the news and news articles and things like that. But I'm going to agree with this with that proviso. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. I think I'd agree with this, generally speaking, because especially here in the United States, that you have those that are homeless, and then you have the poor, and then you have those that live at the poverty line, and then you have the middle class, which is slowly but surely disappearing. Um, and I think that, yeah, it's division of class, not nationality, because when it comes to nationally speaking, we're all united. So in that respect, I will agree. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Hmm. See, I'm not an economics major, so I don't know the relation between inflation and unemployment, details. So inflation is more important than controlling employment. More important. I'm going to disagree because I think it's important to control both. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Strongly agree. I mean, we've seen that fucking corporations, if they don't have regulation, will just begin dumping their trash into the rivers, and they won't give a damn as long as their profits are up. So I strongly agree. They need regulation. In a perfect world, they wouldn't, but no. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. All right, so this is straight out of Marx, and it's kind of the basis for communism, which I really don't have a problem with in theory. Um, how that manifested in the USSR and in China, it came about through, it never really fully manifested in a full communism where the people were supposed to control everything. But that aside, from each according to his ability to each according to his need, basically is saying that as a society we need to take care of each other. And I think in principle it is a good idea. So with that, I will agree. The freer the market, the freer the people. I generally disagree with that statement. Because you can have a market where certain people can't buy things. I mean, we've seen that in our past, especially in the US. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. I will strongly agree with that. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Huh. Um, I will agree, simply because land, especially on the only planet we know of, the only planet we live on, planet Earth, is a rare thing. I think it should be something that is. I will agree with the proviso that, in principle, nobody should own land. Nobody owns the land. I think it goes back to the Native American. Okay, you decide to live here, you decide to live here. But that said, with a growing society and a civilized population, you need a way to divvy it up fairly. So, um, in a perfect world, in a perfect society where everything is fairly done, I think you could essentially do, like someone wants to live on this plot of land. Okay, um, the only thing you really need to do is say, okay, look, we want to, can we run the power? Can we run the water? Blah, 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 blah. That sort of thing. But in a perfect world, I would agree with that. So I'm going to go ahead and agree to that with proviso. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. What is that? Theory of practice of shielding a country's domestic industries from foreign competition by taxing imports. A theory or practice of shielding countries' domestic industries from foreign competition by taxing imports. Um, in principle, I would agree with that because you need to protect the jobs here to stay here and the wages to. But at the same, because on the one hand, you want to, if you got, say DuPont, you know, working 50,000 workers, paying them, you know, I don't know, 40,000 a year doing, textiles, and then you got an overseas company doing the exact same job, employing 100,000 people, but they're only paying them like, I don't know, like what, $5 an hour, which means they could probably put out more product, but and cheaper product, but it's not going to be quality, and it's a race to the bottom. So I think in that respect, you would need protection. But on the other hand, I think that on the other side of that coin, if you've got a company here in the U.S., again the same 50,000 people, but you flip the the work, the wage, and you're saying that this company refuses to raise wages for this company or for this for their workers, and they're only paying them $10, $12 an hour, but this other company is pay is working 100,000 people and paying them $20 an hour. That company is in theory got happier employees, which are making better products, which are then in turn going to be selling more product around the world, and essentially going to be threatening this business, which would in turn hopefully make this business competitive with that business. So I think it depends on the context, but in principle, the statement I kind of agree with in general, in theory. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. I disagree with that statement. I think that's one of the responsibilities, but I think that the numero uno responsibility is how does it contribute to society. That's what I think should be its primary responsibility. The rich are too highly taxed. I completely disagree with that statement. Strongly disagree. Because I mean, if you look, certain companies in this country have paid zero taxes and actually got a freaking a refund. Actually, we paid them money. So I mean, come on, the rich are too highly taxed. Fuck off. I mean, the marginal tax rate in this country for the rich used to be like 90%. That doesn't mean that was their effective tax rate, but their marginal tax rate was 90% over a certain amount. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standard of care. Totally disagree. I think there should be a high standard of care across the board, and anybody should have access to it. I'm for Medicare for all. I'm actually for a single payer healthcare system, like that of the Scandinavian countries, like that of uh, Britain, like that of Canada. Um, Now that doesn't say that to get it up and running, I don't think elective procedures should be um, part of that. I think that's where insurance would be needed. But elective procedures, like I don't know, if you want a facelift or Botox or or you want to get your eyelids a different, or your eyelids, your your eyes a different color. I think that's all elective, and that should be, first count. Should be, the only place where you should be waiting in line. Um, but yeah, I will strongly disagree with that. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Abso-fucking-lutely. I mean, we already see part of that with. There's already laws in the books that you can't say that the business can't say that, like, for example, if they come out with a new drink and they say it'll cure your diabetes, but it doesn't. That's actually, they can't do that. But I think in general I would strongly agree with that. A genuine free market requires restriction on the ability of predator multinationalists to create monopolies. If I'm reading this right, I would strongly disagree with this, because a free market, in a truly free market, there is no room for monopolies, because a free market requires that, the best ideas win, essentially. The best ideas get sold. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. I'm going to disagree. Now, this is where I'm probably going to get in trouble with some people. As it stands right now in the research that I've read, I think anything any abortions in the third trimester should be absolutely out of bounds. Carry it to term, and if you don't want the child, you can give it up for adoption or what have you. Now, anything up until like midway the second trimester, I'd say anything up to the start of the second trimester, free game. As long as the woman is educated on what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and the potential consequences. If she hasn't already educated herself. But I think that's free game, simply because anything up to the second trimester, you're essentially dealing with a fetus that's essentially a husk. There's no real everything is still growing. Nothing is finalized. I mean, hell, the central nervous system isn't even fully finalized till halfway through the second trimester, from what I've read. Now, someone can correct me, but so with all that said, you're not really dealing with a full functioning human, and it, essentially, it's technically not alive yet, because it won't be able to survive outside the mother's womb anyway. So that's where I'm going to disagree with that. All authority should be questioned. Absolutely agree with that. With the proviso that essentially, I don't think authority should be followed blindly. Educate yourself and know where the authority is coming from, and whether it's uh, a lawful or a lawful thing, or an unlawful thing. Essentially, is what I'm saying. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth leaves the world blind and toothless. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. I'll disagree with that. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Okay, I'm stupid. I may feel. I gotta look up what compulsory means. What the hell means mandatory? Okay. Okay, so should not make classroom attendance compulsory. All right, so essentially what that means is required by law or rule, obligated. Okay. Um. I'm gonna agree with that. No, should not make. I'm gonna disagree with that with the proviso that I think that if you're sending your kids to school to learn, that's what they're there for, to learn. Um, it instills in them that they have to go to this place even though they don't want to. Now I think the caveat to this is if the school implements that, yes, it's mandatory, but there can be some exemptions or some considerations to keep them from getting like an attendance violation or what have you. Um, don't make it like, you get three attendance violations and you're out of school. I mean, I think be reasonable. Just if they miss school, be like, okay, why did you miss school? And I think it should be, more gray than not like black and white. Like, okay, you missed school, you're out. I mean, that's kind of like rewarding them. I mean, but all people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep their own kind. Strongly disagree with that statement. I think the more people interact with each other, different cultures, I think the better off the world's going to be. Just my point of view. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Absolutely agree with that. I grew up in the 90s. I was born in 84. I got spanked as a kid. Yeah, I hated it. Yeah, I hated my parents for spanking me. But you know what? I learned to respect my parents, and I didn't fear them. I feared the belt, but I didn't fear them. I knew they loved me. But it also taught me, hey, there's consequences to my actions, and I think that's what you know kids need a little more of these days. But and when you're in that young, I don't think there's really much else you can do to teach consequences other than a physical form of uh, consequence. So that's why I agree with that. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. I agree. Kids tend to like be afraid to tell their parents certain things. I'll agree with that. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Strongly agree. Prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find a job. Prime function of schooling should be to equip. I will disagree with that. And here's why. I think the primary objective of schooling should be to educate children on how to prepare for life, not just go to a 9 to 5 job. I think that they should learn, you know, early in the early days, they should just be learning the basics of, how to read, write, and arithmetic and all of that. When you get into middle school and high school, we should be teaching our kids, civics, strong in civics, the responsibility of being a member of the community, um, how to balance a checkbook, even though we don't use checkbooks anymore, but how to finance, all the good stuff that we never got taught, and just to equip future generations to find a job, I think is too narrow in its thinking. So that's why I'm going to disagree with that. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Ooh. Um, I disagree actually, simply whether because yes, if they have a first of all, they have a right to reproduce just like any rest of human beings have the right to reproduce. So that's if you try to make regulations towards that, you're encroaching on a, a, a group of people's rights, and that is discrimination by definition. So I don't agree with discrimination. Um, but I get where this question is coming from as far as inheritable disabilities, meaning you're essentially passing on a potential harm to a future human. However, inheritable disabilities are not always guaranteed. There is always like a 50-50, 60-40, whatever chance. I mean, just giving out general numbers, but you get what I'm trying to say. And at the rate we're going to be able to fix those anyway in, a decade, 2 decades to go. So, I mean, That's why I'm going to disagree, because I don't agree with discrimination, and I think in our near future we're going to be able to fix those anyway. So, the most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. The most important? The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Well, you don't really accept discipline. You just learn why discipline exists. You learn why you need it. But I'm gonna disagree with that simply because of the bad wording, and because I don't think that's the most important thing for children to learn. There are no savaged or civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. I will strongly agree with that, because I think the term savage has been thrown around a lot to mean cultures that, aren't exactly like ours. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. Ooh. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity. Okay, so if I am able to work and I refuse the opportunity because I have to take care of someone, then yeah, I will disagree with that. Because I have, say, my significant other is bedridden and needs 24/7 care, and I can't actually financially afford a live-in nurse. I mean, I think there are caveats to that, so that's why I'm disagreeing with that. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. I disagree. I think there's a phase that you go through where you do that, but I think in general it's better to face it and figure out why you're troubled, and to try to move and try to fix it, correct it, what have you, and move forward stronger. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. I disagree. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for. No, I will strongly disagree with that. No broadcasting no broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. I'll disagree with that. I think most I think most news channels ought to be publicly funded instead of corporately funded, personally, but that's just me. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. I'll agree with that. A significant advantage of, all you gotta do is take a look at the freaking Patriot Act. That damn act is wholly unconstitutional, but we let it pass. A significant advantage of one party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress. This is actually a very bad question. A significant advantage of one party state is, I don't think it's an advantage. I think it is. I just completely disagree with this statement as a whole, or this question as a whole. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. That's straight out of 1984. I will disagree. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. All right, I'm gonna I'm gonna disagree with this. All right, I think I have held for a long time that the death penalty is barbaric and it's uncivilized. Now you may be thinking to yourself, but there's people that that need to be out of society. Absolutely, and there's more options. You can say you, and this says for the most barbaric crimes. So say someone is a serial killer, he gets caught and is red-handed, like no doubt whatsoever, proof that this person did it. I mean, he outright admits it, he or she. Okay, so now this person has effectively given up his or her rights as a normal human being in society for a period of time. So we essentially either he either gets a choice of being studied by scientists for the rest of his life, how his brain works and all of that, or he can try to work it off, or try. There's 1,000 different things that you could do to punish slash or rehabilitate. I think that the death penalty is more, an emotional justice than it is an actual justice. And I don't think it's suits a modern civilization bent on justice, because you're going to punish a killer by killing him, but we say killing is wrong. That's why the murder is against the law. I mean, I think it's kind of a redundant law, but that's my roundabout justification. So, death penalty is an option. Most serious crimes, disagree. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. I don't agree. I think in a perfect world, in an ideal world, in an ideal society, everybody would work together, and you wouldn't need to say, "Hey, you need to do this. Hey, can you do this? Would you do this?" So, abstract art that doesn't represent anything should be considered art at all. Individually, I may agree, but as a general blanket question, I'll disagree. I think anything can be art for the most part. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Strongly disagree. Strongly disagree. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. See, let's get back to the earlier question. I don't think it's a waste of time to try. If you try and then realize this person can be rehabilitated, then you can find other options. So I will disagree with that. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Strongly disagree. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Disagree. Her first duty is whatever the hell she makes priority. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. I'll agree. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Disagree. I think it's right. I think it's more mature to question the establishment and make sure nothing's changed where we can make it better. Astrology accurately explains many things. Nope. You cannot be moral without being religious. Strongly disagree with that statement. For those of you that know me, you know why I strongly disagree with that statement. Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping charity is better than Social Security. Disagree. Absolutely disagree with that statement. Some people are naturally unlucky. Disagree. I mean, I don't know what that question's getting at, but I mean, I kind of do. Some people are naturally unlucky, so they're not going to be successful. Basically, it's a jab at the poor. So I'm going to disagree with that statement. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. Absolutely, strongly disagree. That's what the church is for. All right, sex outside of marriage is usually immoral. Strongly disagree. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Strongly agree. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. Strongly agree. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Strongly agree. Now, no one can feel naturally homosexual. Strongly disagree. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. Strongly disagree. Now, let's see where I stand. Oh shit. If we recognize that this is essentially an economic line that's fine as far as it goes, we can show, for example, Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Pol Pot with their commitment to a totally controlled economy. On the hard left, socialists like Mahatma Gandhi and Robert Mugabe would occupy a less extreme left position. Margaret Thatcher would be well over to the right, but further right still would be someone like the ultimate free marketeer, General Pinochet, that deals with economics. But the social dimensions is also important in politics. That's the one that the mere left right scale doesn't adequately address. So we've added one ranging in positions from extreme authoritarian to extreme libertarian. Both an economic dimension and a social dimension are important factors for proper political analysis. By adding the social dimension, you can show that Stalin is an authoritarian leftist, i.e., the state is more important than the individual, and Gandhi, believing in the supreme value of each individual, is a liberal leftist. Huh. With the while the okay, so essentially Stalin is uh, upper left. Hitler is essentially, not so much right as he is up. Gandhi, Friedman, what have you. U.S. neoconservatives with a high commitment to high military spending, nationalists tend to be more authoritarian than hard right. By contrast, neoliberals opposed to such moral leadership, and more especially the ensuring demands on the taxpayer belong to a further right but less authoritarian region. So I am a lower left, so I'm kind of along the roads of. I'm actually lower on the scale than Gandhi was. I wish it kind of gave you more information. Let's see here. So Bernie Sanders. Who the hell is that? Who the fuck is that? Nelson Mandela. Nice. All right. So there you have it. That's my political compass test. Um, I'm kind of in the middle, libertarian left, which is where I kind of expected to be. So I think last time I was kind of. I think last time I was more uh, libertarian than I was left a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. So let me know what you think about my positions, right? What you think of what you think of the test? What you think of my reasonings behind some of the questions? Let me know what you think in the comments below. All right. So that was a political compass test for me. I'll probably take it again in another couple years. Um, Outside of that, I got nothing else. Do me a favor. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you didn't like it, don't just hit the dislike button. comment below why you disliked it. And if you were encouraged to check out more of my content on my channel from this video or any other video, do me a favor. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you never miss another video. And to all of you, please share so I can get my viewers up, my subscribers up, and I can make more content more regularly. All right? This is your Rambling Man saying peace and have a good one.